finally loaded up. Soon after screams, most of them growlers, and laughter started to echo through the cabin. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Darwin suddenly closed the laptop and brought out the package. "What's that?" Curiously, Evelyn moved forward and watched as Darwin unpacked and set up the Ouija board. The two friends looked at each other with big eyes, but while Evelyn's eyes reflected anticipation, Quella's were afraid. "No way," she protested. "Come on," pleaded Evelyn, "just for a moment." Her narrowed eyes widened and her big lips formed a pout. "Please, I've always wanted to try this." Darwin also tried to convince Quella. When she realized that she could not escape the situation, she finally agreed under protest. Together, the three put their fingers on the planchette and began to summon a spirit. "How exactly does this work?" whispered Quella after a few minutes when nothing had happened. Her voice had taken on a nervous undertone. "No idea." Cursing, Evelyn took their fingers off the planchette. Darwin's followed. "Pity, would have been cool." Evelyn nodded and made herself comfortable again in front of the laptop. "Let's just keep watching the movie," she suggested. Relieved about Evelyn's suggestion, Quella was about to leave her place in front of the board when the planchette suddenly started to move on its own. Quella screamed. Her high vocals penetrated to the room and made Darwin and Evelyn look up in horror. But before they knew what was going on, the flames of the surrounding candles shot up and bathed the living room in a threatening glow before they went out on one by one. "Shit!" cursed Darwin. "What the hell?" Ella ran hastily to the room and joined her friends. "I don't know what that shit was about, but I want to go home now." She grabbed her laptop and stuffed it into her backpack. Then she pulled at Darwin's sleeve, who, like Ellen, started paralyzed at the flames. "Come on," she urged. "You don't want to stay here, do you?" Evelyn shook her head hastily before she gathered her things, and Darwin also had to admit to himself that goosebumps covered his body. But before the friends could leave, throughout the front door, the living room door creaked and flew into the lock. "That's not funny!" Ella screamed close to tears and looked at her friends blatantly. "You can stop the act now." Evelyn and Darwin looked at each other confused. "We have nothing to do with this," Darwin swore. With trembling fingers, Evelyn pressed the cold metal handle down, but the living room door did not open. Panting, she pulled her hands to her chest as an icy shiver ran through her body. Her teeth began to chatter uncontrollably, and her breath became visible. Darwin took her in his arms and tried to warm her. He had to suppress the urge to leave her immediately because her skin felt like ice. When Quella felt a touch on her shoulder, she flinched. Her backpack fell to the ground. She turned around 180 degrees, but couldn't see anything in the soft glow of the candles. Her muscles tightened. Her body perceived something that her eyes could not see. Her breath became visible too, but the room was still pleasantly warm. Suddenly, she cried out in pain. Something dark creeped up her veins. It reminded her of black ink that left its traces under her skin and slowly began to fill her heart. Quella sank to her knees, unable to hold herself upright any longer. In an instant, an agitated Darwin, who wanted to help her back onto her feet, stood at Quella's side. His instincts advised him beside her.